The paper I'm looking at here, this is January 2020. I am doing number 5 here, section D. So the question I'm looking at, the number of road accidents will decrease if the age for obtaining a driver's license is increased to 20 years. Write an essay giving your views on this statement. In general, there are two types of instructions you'll get at the end. You might have to more strictly support a particular side, or you might have to give your views. When you get the chance to just give your views, it means you may straddle the fence a little bit. However, even if you want to build out an objective, kind of two-sided argument, you still need to take one stance. So it means even if you're gonna mention one point that supports side A, if side B is the side you're choosing, your argument should make it, your essay should make it clear that this is your main stance. So you still want to be on a side, right? For me, I prefer to just support one side all the way and maybe just give a little bit of credence to the other side. That way it's not too balanced and it doesn't seem as if I don't know what my opinion is, right? You don't want to be in that kind of situation. So here we are. We're at the planning section. As usual, I'm going to show you how I mark up the planning section. There are 3 steps to my plan. In fact, there are 3 steps and the same 3 steps in every section. Step 1, you guessed it, no prizes there, plan. And I'm going to plan in 10 minutes. This is my workflow. So I'm going to plan in 10 minutes and I need to do 3 things within this 10-minute period. I need to brainstorm points for both sides. That's my first step in the planning section. Second thing I need to do while planning is I need to choose a side. So even if I want to balance my argument a little bit, I still need to be on a side. The third thing I want to do is I want to select 3 points. So this is my planning setup. I'm going to brainstorm points for both sides, agree and disagree, pros, cons, side A, side B. Then, after looking at the points for sides A and B, I'm going to weigh and say, I think side B is a little bit stronger, or I think side A is a little bit easier for me. I'm going to choose a side, right? Then I would have brainstormed some points, remember? I'm going to choose 3 of those brainstormed points. And those 3 points are going to be the body of my essay. And if I want to mention a point on the opposing side, I have lots of points to choose from because I would have brainstormed points for both sides. Good. That's my plan. My second step is to write, and this takes me about 25 minutes. So this is assuming that we actually have the full 45 minutes. If you have less than 45 minutes, you have to adjust to time. All right. So in the writing section, what I want to do here is I want to ensure that I have 5 paragraphs. This is my style. Some teachers teach a 4-paragraph model. I'm an old-fashioned guy. I like my 5 paragraphs. First, I have my intro. When my intro is complete, I'll check that box. Then I'll have point 1, then point 2, then point 3, because I would have chosen 3 points. And no prizes. If you can guess what comes last, it has to be my conclusion. That's my writing setup. Bam. What's my final step? Review. And if I'm managing my time well, I will have 5 minutes. Or let's say it took me 2 minutes to write all of this plan down, then I'd have, say, 3 minutes in which to review. Now, while reviewing, I won't write out all of the different things to check while reviewing, but common sense will tell you grammar, punctuation, structure, spelling, blah, blah, blah. You know the review stuff. So I've used up half of or 2/3 of my planning space. And what I've done is I've written out my workflow: plan, write, review. 10 minutes, 25 minutes, 5 minutes, or 3 minutes. So here we go. It's time to start planning. What's the first step? First step, brainstorm points for both sides. So for and against. Bam. Let's check the question. The number of road accidents will decrease if the age for obtaining a driver's license is increased to 20 years. All right. I have already written this essay, so I don't need to actually think now, but I'm just showing you the thought process that I took while thinking. So for 4, I could come up with 3 points to support this. 1, so let's make sure we understand the question, guys. The number of road accidents will decrease, so there will be fewer road accidents if the age for obtaining a driver's license is increased to 20 years. All right. In some countries, and I'm working under this particular assumption, you have to be 18 to acquire an actual license. You can get like a provisional license at 16, but I think it has to be 18 in some countries. I'm not sure if it's most countries. I think in Jamaica it's 18 to acquire an actual license. So I'll be working with that age. So the question is saying, if 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds cannot get a license, if they have to wait until they reach 20, then the result will be a decline or a decrease in road accidents. All right. So let's say that is true. What are some points I could use to support that idea? Well, the first point is easy. It's simple math. If you deny 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds from getting a license, then it means we're going to have fewer drivers on the road. Fewer drivers on the road, fewer opportunities for accidents. Yeah. So that's a point that could be used to support. Another point I came up with, 18. That's another point I could use to support my idea that we should raise the license age to 20. 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds are still not fully adults. And so driving is a pretty big deal. It's an important thing. They shouldn't be allowed to drive, right? It doesn't matter if you actually believe it. It just matters what point you can write in the exam. Yeah. CSEC doesn't care what you really believe. They care what points you are able to explain. Yeah. And the third point I could come up with is, if the drivers have to wait until they reach 20, then it means 2 more years of driving practice. It means if you're 18, you can't get a license. What can you do? It means you have more time to practice and become a better driver. So we're going to be having more seasoned or more prepared or more ready drivers on the roads if they have to wait longer and perhaps train longer. Maybe driving school will become longer, stuff like that. Okay, so what are some points against raising the age? Well, there will be more. Obviously, if we have fewer drivers, it means more persons are going to be forced to take taxis and buses, and in certain countries, trains. Yeah. And that will not be beneficial for anybody. It's going to be less comfortable for those using the public transportation, and it might actually put pressure on the systems themselves. The efficiency might decrease. If you're an 18 or 19-year-old and you're able to drive, then you're able to be more productive. You can drive to work, drive to school. You can pick up the kids if you have kids or if you have siblings. If you're unable to drive and that's just not an option, the productivity will decrease for a significant fraction of the population. All right, before I move on to the writing section, because my or to the choosing a side section, Panda, what do you think of these points? What would you consider adding to for or against?
Well, yeah, as I was just saying that I think you could be young and responsible is the biggest thing. I feel like that might be the point that they were probably looking for most when they say, oh, let's just, increase the age and that'll fix accidents, as if only young people cause accidents. So that's definitely a
Hmm.
thing. Um, well, honestly, my genuine opinion on this question, I'm just leaning more against it because maybe I'm just like, that's just my opinion. I feel like age doesn't have anything to do with it. So all of your points against, I agree with. And if I was
Mm.
doing this, I would have led to against. But in terms of the points themselves, they're good.
All right,
Which one of these
nice.
arguments do you find to be stronger?
Well, it's an interesting question because the argument I prefer to write is
Mm-hmm.
not the argument I believe. And we're
Mm.
going to end up in this situation from time to time when doing exams. I actually believe that against makes more logical sense because I just don't think age matters that much when you look at accidents. It's not a case where only 18 or most accidents are caused by 18 or 19-year-olds. However, I think that these particular points are easy for me to argue. Yeah.
True.
So I'm going to argue these. So I believe this. I would argue this in a debate, in a real life discussion. But for
Mm-hmm.
the exam, I'm choosing the points that for me, I can quickly, without even thinking, just generate some ideas, make up some realistic statistics, and get the train moving. So I'm going to go with four.
Mm-hmm. That's a good
Yeah.
thing. I also think it's important to consider the examiner themselves who's going to be reading this. Chances are it's an older person. Chances are they might more so agree with, yes, young people are driving fast and crazy, and that's why. So, for exam purposes, it's
Mm.
probably give you a little edge to argue for this.
Yeah, that's an interesting insight too. And Gabby is supporting what young boy is saying, 18 to 19-year-olds, they're gonna drive even if it's illegal. So you're just gonna have more unlicensed drivers, yeah. So that's a point you could raise if you want to put that in there. All right, so going back to my planning, because in the exam I'd be constantly checking my planning sheet to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that I'm on track. I can say that I've brainstormed. I like to brainstorm 4 to 5 points, but in this session, because I did this question in about 35 minutes, I only got to three for each. I stopped there. But if you can
Oh my
find
gosh.
4 or 5, no
For a
problem. You
second,
have
I
more
thought you
options.
said 45 points, and I was like, what? No, 425 points. Okay.
4 to 5. Definitely not 45. That would take the entire paper. Yeah, paper's time. Right. So I have brainstormed. I can check that box. I have chosen a side. I'm going to do four. So now I'm going to select 3 points, which is easy because I only have 3 points.
Mm.
Bam. Planning is done. And this took me less than 10 minutes here on stream, but it's because this is all pre thought. But it actually took me about 10 minutes in real time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 10 minutes should be able to get you through these steps, brainstorm points, and you want to think about both sides. Even if you have an idea of what side you want to choose, it's important to give your mind the option because you never know. You might be surprised that wow, I thought that four would have been easy, but against seems easier. So at least give it a thought before you decide to go for side A or side B.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to move to the writing part, and I'll start with my intro. You should know by now, especially the English B students who've been following my essay videos, we start with a hook, then we move on to the thesis statement, or like the actual side you're on, and then you list out the points you will be tackling. That is your intro. So it's hook, going to grab the reader's attention. Then it's thesis. Thesis is such a big word. Why do we say thesis? It just means your stance. What do you believe? And then you're going to touch on the 3 points that the essay will discuss. What it means is if someone reads your intro, they know what to expect in your essay. They're not going to be surprised. Like where did this point come from? Where did that point come from? It's going to be easy. Do you do 5 paragraphs as well, Panda?
Usually it works out to be 5 paragraphs. Sometimes it's four, depending on, but usually five. Because like
Mm.
you, I like to have intro, outro clearly defined, and then I like to have, well, 4 points in the middle, three, four, and one against. So it usually turns out to be 5 paragraphs. But then I too, I don't like to stay too rigid with how I'm writing things because in the moment a lot of things change. So I go in with a plan. That's
Mm.
what I would like to happen, but yeah, I leave it open as I'm
Yeah.
writing.
Yeah, that's completely fine. It's good to be able to adjust on the fly if needed. But in the moment, students know the difference between adjusting and forgetting the plan, right? Don't
Yeah,
throw away the plan. But if necessary, you can adjust maybe an extra paragraph or one less paragraph. It won't damage you too much. But make sure that you're adjusting deliberately and it's not, oh, I forgot to write the intro. Right?
yeah.
So the plan is not something that's gonna restrict you, it's something that's gonna guide you. So look at it that way.
Theodore Roosevelt, I think it was, who has this famous quotation, planning, well, plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. And I think what that really
Mm.
means, especially when I see it in real life, you go in there to any situation with a plan, exactly how it's going to work, and the first thing you notice when you get there, something is different. But at the same time, you
Mhm.
can't go without having plans because usually you have plan A, B, C, D, and now you can adjust dynamically to fit the situation. And in exam circumstances, the summary might have swallowed up way more time than you were picturing. So you'll be super glad you have a plan for when you reach down to section D. And there's no way to tell. Um, so yeah, I use the plan as a guideline. I know what I'm hoping to have happen, but I don't stick to it
Mhm.
super, super rigidly. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's how I look at it as well. And even
Okay.
my essay structure, my
Mm-hmm.
essay structure isn't. This is my general thing, but it's not super rigid. I actually have 2 types of intros that I use. This is
Mm-hmm.
my more regular one, but incidentally, for this particular essay, I'm using the one that's not so regular. So it's
Huh.
interesting because for this intro, I do hook and then I do thesis, and that's it. The intro is done. So depending on how you want to introduce, you can give a nice thesis statement without going into the 3 particular points, but the 3 points will fit within the thesis. Or you can explicitly state you're going to be discussing A, B, C, right? So for this essay, for the next essay I'll show you, I'll explicitly state the 3 points in the intro. For this one, I will not, and you will see how it flows. All right, so my intro, I need a nice intro that is gonna fit with the idea that kids should not be on the roads, right? So I'm gonna put on my old man beard and a grumpy face, and I want to ban all 18 and 19-year-olds from the road. So this is my intro that I came up with.
I'm
Need
interested
for
already,
Speed.
so
I know you mentioned gaming PC, so I know this is gonna strike a chord. Need for Speed, and these are all games I've mastered over the years. And Burnout, I could say worldwide, but I want to say all over the world. I'll just be old fashioned for now. All over the world. However, so my hook is 2 sentences. And this is why I didn't bother to list all 3 points. I didn't want to make the intro too long. But I really wanted a long hook this time. However, real world driving is not a game.
Uh, yes, that's
Mhm.
a old guy thing to say.
And I could end it there, but I'm going to go on a little bit longer. And because I want to bring some emotion in and the
hmm
consequences
hmm
of a single lapse in judgment. Is there an E here? I can't spell judgment. I think there's no E.
I don't think there's any.
There's
Look
no
it up.
E.
hmm
There's no E. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, no E. And the consequences of a single lapse in judgment can be devastating. That's my hook. Right? What do you think about this hook? It's on the longer side, but I think it really sets the tone for how strong this essay is going to be. Yeah. Mario Kart, Need for Speed, and Burnout are just a few of the captivating racing games that have gripped the attention of children and teenagers all over the world. However, real world driving is not a game, and the consequences of a single lapse in judgment can be devastating.
hmm
Oh, there's an E. Is there an E
hmm
in judgment?
Yep. Now that I see it here, it looks funny. Yeah, it's just literally like judge meant stuck together.
All right. All right.
hmm
So that's my hook. So because I've opted for a longer hook, I'm gonna make the rest of the intro more concise. So I'm not gonna list all 3 points. Instead, I'm gonna go ahead and just give an overarching thesis and then jump in. So this
hmm
is how I do it. I think an intro like this can go without listing the 3 points I'm gonna talk about, because the hook is a little bit longer, a little bit more profound, and the thesis is a little bit more encapsulating. So with this, I think it satisfies what an intro needs to be. Yeah. What do you think of the intro, Panda?
I think it's definitely interesting. Like I felt hooked by the hook. Like, um, I want to see where you're going with this. When I'm doing these, I always try to make sure that it's completely clear which side of the argument I'm supporting right out the gate. So I
Mm-hmm.
think this thing about consequences of lapse in judgment devastating, those are all negative words. So you could, if you're just reading this for the first time as the examiner, you'd be able to tell this all sounds like it's sliding in a negative direction. So he's going to be against the statement. And I think that's probably the most important thing, besides capturing the reader's attention. Most important thing is to make it clear which side of the argument you support. So,
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Panda. And while I'm asking Panda for advice, Panda has no qualms with telling me, Adam, that sucks. Right? Panda came into one of my classes and gave my summary a
LOL.
4 out of 5.
Wow,
Gave my
okay.
summary a 4 out of 5 in front of my students. So I'm just letting you know I'm getting real feedback here. Yeah, it's
That's
not a
true. I
game.
won't
It's
tell
not
you
a
if it's
nepotism.
I won't tell you it's good if it's not good, so
Yeah. And I'm getting some good comments from the teacher in the chat here as well. So I think the hook is effective, even though I haven't listed the 3 specific points I'll be touching on. All right. So the first point, gotta go back to my planning. I can check off the intro. Now I need to do point one. Point one is fewer drivers equals fewer accidents. Now, between planning and writing, you might want to switch around the order of the points. So what if you say, okay, I want to start with this one because it's stronger, or that one because it's it works well after the intro. So you don't need to write the points in the order in which you planned them, right? You write them in a way that's just most logical. And yeah, Kewama here is saying that she has counted 89 words already. So making my intro longer just would have diminishing returns at this point. I need to get into it now. Yeah, that's the idea. All right, so I'm getting into the first point. And while writing, remember, whether it's argumentative or persuasive, technically, you still want to persuade, right, to some degree, because you want the reader to believe in your opinion and you want them to understand that, hey, you're making sense. So don't be afraid to be a little spicy. Not too much attitude, no sarcasm, definitely, but be confident in your writing. Believe that you're right. Okay, so the first, using words like obvious, don't overdo it. But what this does is it indicates a sense of certainty in your point, and it kind of gives the idea that if you disagree with me, you're the one not seeing something clearly. So you want to kind of make it as persuasive as possible without leaning toward being too sarcastic or anything like that. So the first and most obvious reason, the first and most obvious reason for which raising the driving age would decrease road accidents is a matter of simple mathematics. For traffic complications. I didn't want to repeat the word accident, so I just said traffic complications. All right. This is a longer paragraph, but it captures my first point here. So the first and most obvious reason for which raising the age would decrease road accidents is a matter of simple mathematics. Fewer drivers equals fewer accidents. Raising the driving age to 20 would remove 18 and 19-year-old drivers from the roads. While this change might seem insignificant, even for a small country like Jamaica, that amounts to approximately 100,000 fewer potential drivers. There would be fewer drivers to make mistakes on the roads, as well as fewer vehicles to present opportunities for traffic complications. That's my first line of reasoning. And I just did some quick mental math to arrive at 100,000 by looking at the population of Jamaica, how many persons might be 18 to 19, and I just came up with an approximation. It doesn't have to be anything accurate, but it shouldn't be far-fetched. Like I wouldn't say 1 million fewer potential drivers. That wouldn't make sense, since Jamaica only has a few million residents. All right, that's my first paragraph. Now I need to look for my second one. So point one is done. Point two is 18 to 19-year-olds are generally not mature enough to handle the responsibility of driving. So this is what I need to do. Note for each paragraph, I introduce the point in the first sentence and then I explain. You want to throw in words like research, words like scientific, words like fact. And I'm going to state that fact here. Human beings, what do human beings do? They mature as they age. So one logical technique you can use when writing a persuasive piece is you want to throw in as many agreeable facts as possible, facts that no one can dispute. Who is going to dispute the fact that human beings mature as they age? Of course, you have a few exceptions, but in general, that's an accepted fact. So I'm going to put that there, and I'm going to try to apply it now to this specific scenario of the driver's license. So human beings mature as they age. What I'm going to do, I'm going to acknowledge the other side, and then I'm going to defeat the other side. So this is a linking phrase. What it means is I've given you a fact, and now I'm going to give you an implication of that fact. So I say, considering this, reckless and boundary pushing drivers. I didn't just want to say careless drivers, reckless and boundary pushing drivers. Naturally, I'm making it clear that my argument is a common sense argument. Naturally leading to what? Is it going to be more accidents? No, fewer accidents. All right. Do you think this is a clear and logical point?
Hmm. It's
Yeah.
definitely following the plan too. It's definitely consistent with where you started. The first reason it blends right into the second reason, and I feel like reckless and boundary pushing comes right back to the intro where you said that it's easy to have a lapse with serious consequences. So the whole thing is flowing, which is
Mm-hmm.
good.
Yeah. I think there's a connection from one point to the next. Yeah. So the second reason for increasing the driving age is a matter of commonly accepted scientific fact. Human
Hmm.
beings mature as they age. So I'm introducing the point with this agreeable fact that 90% of people would agree with. Then I'm going to lead you into my actual point now. While there are some children that might be more mentally mature than some adults, it's important once or twice to acknowledge the opposing side so it doesn't come across as you not knowing the alternative way of thinking. So yes, I'll give you that. Some children might be more mentally mature than some adults, but in general, right, in most cases, persons become more cautious and thoughtful as they age, right? Considering this, the age increase would lead to a lower percentage of reckless and boundary pushing drivers, naturally leading to fewer accidents. So I'm giving you cause and effect. I'm giving you a logical flow of thought. So there's not much room to say my argument isn't sensible. Even if you disagree, it's not going to be because my argument isn't logical, right?
Hmm.
All right, let's go to my last point because I'm halfway there. So I've done point two, done point two. Next, it's going to be 2 more years of driving practice. If we increase the age, younger drivers will have more time to practice and become better drivers. Because if you have to wait until you're 20, you're going to be more prepared by the time you get the license. So this would result in newly licensed drivers being much more prepared to face the road. Instead of saying much more prepared to drive, I want to make it seem as if facing the road is this big obstacle and challenge that should be taken seriously. So I'm going to use the term face the road because it's a challenge, right? Would be much more prepared to face the road and have to bring it back home, much less likely to cause accidents. Everything must come back home to this point, much less likely to cause accident. And I'm going to add in a statistic here. This statistic is made up, but I try to make my statistics realistic. As it stands, this is a nice word, a disproportionate, my goodness, there should be more P's. I think that's fine. As it stands, a disproportionate 25% of all road accidents all right, that's my final point. Finally, raising the age for obtaining a license to 20 would give prospective drivers an additional 2 years to practice driving before being licensed. This would result in newly licensed drivers being much more prepared to face the road and much less likely to cause accidents. As it stands, a disproportionate 25% of all road accidents are caused by drivers under 22. This means that, on the whole, young drivers need to spend more time practicing before being permitted to obtain a license. All right, so now I need to drop my conclusion, and that's going to be it. Bam, bam. Need to conclude. So, in concluding, I want to reinforce my stance and very, very, very briefly state my 3 reasons for my stance. So I'm going to open with as explained, because it should be clear by now. As explained, so this one sentence wraps up my 3 points. As explained, increasing the age for acquiring a driver's license to 20 would lead to fewer drivers competing to use the already congested motorways, as well as a driving population that is more mature and more experienced. All right, and my closing sentence, our closing 2 sentences. These factors, because I've just listed 3 factors, I've just explained them in the essay. These factors would logically, because I'm making sense, would logically lead to what I'll do. Since I have an extra 1 minute on the clock in my imaginary scenario, I did have 1 minute or so left after reaching this far. I'm going to wrap up with a nice closing sentence. A nice closing sentence. And that is it. It's my conclusion. I've retouched on the 3 points and I've wrapped up by reestablishing my stance or my opinion on the matter. All right, here we go from top. Mario Kart, Need for Speed, and Burnout are just a few of the captivating racing games that have gripped the attention of children and teenagers all over the world. However, real world driving is not a game, and the consequences of a single lapse in judgment can be devastating. While many concur with the current age for obtaining a driver's license, 18 years, science and statistics reveal that increasing this age would result in a decrease in road accidents. The first and most obvious reason for which raising the driving age would decrease road accidents is a matter of simple mathematics. Fewer drivers equals fewer accidents. Raising the driving age to 20 would remove 18 and 19-year-old drivers from the roads. While this change might seem insignificant, even for a small country like Jamaica, that amounts to approximately 100,000 fewer potential drivers. There would be fewer drivers to make mistakes on the roads, as well as fewer vehicles to present opportunities for traffic complications. The second reason for increasing the driving age is a matter of commonly accepted scientific fact. Human beings mature as they age. And here's a little counterpoint again. While there are some children that might be more mentally mature than some adults, because you could argue that on the other side, in general, so when you bring up a counterpoint, be sure to defeat it. Don't bring it up if you can't defeat it. In general, persons become more cautious and thoughtful as they age. Considering this, the age increase would lead to a lower percentage of reckless and boundary pushing drivers, naturally leading to fewer accidents. Finally, raising the age for obtaining a license to 20 would give prospective drivers an additional 2 years to practice driving before being licensed. This would result in newly licensed drivers being much more prepared to face the road and much less likely to cause accidents. As it stands, a disproportionate 25% of all road accidents are caused by drivers under 22. This means that, on the whole, young drivers need to spend more time practicing before being permitted to obtain a license. Conclusion: as explained, increasing the age for acquiring a driver's license to 20 would lead to fewer drivers competing to use the already congested motorways, as well as a driving population that is more mature and more experienced. These factors would logically lead to a decline in road accidents. While this change would initially, another counterpoint ish, while this change would initially disappoint teens who are excited to get behind the wheel, this is a small price to pay for safer roadways. All right, what do you guys think? Do you think it's a complete essay? Do you think I followed my plan? And do you think my points were logical?
I definitely thought that the points were logical. I felt like this whole thing felt very logical. I thought the flow was good. Um, the vocabulary that you used to establish that you don't support these young drivers just getting out there doing all sorts of things. I feel like that was consistent throughout the whole thing. You didn't start off like sounding in one voice and then you lapse to something else further on. So, yes, I think I really might give this 4.9 out of 5.
I'll take it. Yeah, coming from Panda, I'll take it. I'll take it. So this is how it looks on the page. It's one. How many full pages? One full page,
Mm-hmm.
two full pages, 2 pages, and a little bit. So it's not that long.